Well, welcome. Tonight we're going to talk to a special group of people in the back years who led us through some safety issues, who always seem to be at the wrong end of the spear when it comes down to publicity, because it's always talking about the problems that we face. But yet, to keep Milford healthy, clean, and the town we want, we absolutely count on a Board of Health. And although we may be a little bit prejudiced towards them, there's towns around us that have followed a lot of the policies of Milford Board of Health. And you can be very proud that towns want to mimic what we do. But let's start with introductions.
Yes, Dan Ciariello. This started as the director of the Board of Health about 3 months ago now. Came from after 11 years as a health inspector and health agent in Taunton.
Paul Mazzucchelli, Board of Health member, also a former health agent for 42 years, and I stuck with it by asking the town voters to elect me as their Board of Health member as well.
And let's see, former school, former
Housing Authority. Yeah, and Select Board.
and still always a Heights boy.
Yeah, and the Heights boy, exactly.
And
Mayor of 2015.
it was 15
I
that
was
you were
the
the mayor?
55th mayor. And you were the 52nd?
I can't remember.
Okay.
Yeah, something like that.
All right.
Was it 52nd or 49? Whatever.
Mm.
Dan, let's start. You just made a decision to leave Taunton.
Yes.
Why Milford?
It seemed like a really good opportunity. Come with a board that really knew what they were dealing with, the situations, very knowledgeable, that would be able to support me. There was a very good staff in place with a lot of experience between Lisa, who's been there for over 10 years, Joan, the food inspector, who has an incredible knowledge of food safety, and I'm actually learning a lot from her. Her knowledge is vast, and she's been taking me out to a few restaurant inspections. So I felt like I could support them, I could grow, I could get better at what I can do. So it seemed like a really good opportunity to kind of grow my career and help a town, and we'll see how it goes.
Well, you certainly have a group with experience.
Yes.
I mean, we used to laugh. Was it Lenny or Jerry was the youngster with only 30 years on the board?
That was Lenny Albert. He at the time he had only 30 years. Now he's up to 40 something, I would say. We had Jerry, Kenny. Kenny's still there with us as well. So our board is well over 100 years experience, amongst the three of us. But like I said, with public health, experience really counts, like Dan was saying, and we're very fortunate to have him as well, for the simple reason he's coming from a city that would more or less be the big brother of Milford, has the same demographics, same type of apartment homes, the diversity is there, hotels and pools and body art. They have everything that we have, but probably on a much larger scale, and that's why we needed someone who had that local experience. You have these health agents and health directors who apply for the jobs with a lot of degrees, like either a master's or a doctorate, but their experience was more or less in an office or during doing, let's say, vaccine clinics and things like that, where you have a lot of local experience. You have experience in practically every mandated responsibility that the State Department of Public Health would put out for you. And that's what Dan had. And like, again, we're fortunate enough to have him and apply. It's really a big deal lately to get somebody to do local public health. For the simple reason, I believe what had a big impact on that, Albert, was the pandemic. A lot of individuals, a lot of the residents took local public health when they were trying to enforce pandemic responsibilities and what they should more or less have throughout the pandemic to protect them. They were using it more of a political base than a scientific base. In other words, a lot of the mandates that we had to protect individuals were based on science, but a lot of individuals took that as political. In other words, you're doing it, the Board of Health thinks they have all the power, they're doing this, they're impeding our lifestyle, our quality of life is not the same because of the Board of Health, and it wasn't that. We would, a lot of the mandates that we were putting on the various aspects of the town was to protect public health. It wasn't to punish.
And Dan, if you had been around years ago, and I got a kick out of Paul being accused of being anti-immigrant, a boy from the Heights
That's right. Yeah.
being accused of being anti-immigrant because we were passing laws about how, limiting 500 people per household, and people took it the wrong way. You look and you say a house has 100, 200 amps of service. Well, that's fine. You got one kitchen.
Yep.
Now you put 3 kitchens in because you're breaking up the house into 3 families.
Right.
It's just a matter of time before a fire or.
Exactly.
But again, I always love when they take base science and throw it out the window and say, well, it's because you're anti-immigrant.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, excuse me, have you looked at the people who are pushing this?
Mm-hmm. And you're right, Al. That's what we got that a lot when we were enforcing the occupancy bylaw. You had, let's say, a regular, typical 2-family home. As you said, 1 kitchen, 1 bathroom, 2 bedrooms and a living room, and same thing upstairs. It was wired for a 2-family. It was plumbed for a 2-family. Fire code for a 2-family. And now you had individuals breaking up that living room into 4 rooms. They made it into four bedrooms plus the 2 bedrooms. Their cellar was also made into little cubicles as well, and they were renting out rooms. And it's not that we were being anti-immigrant or anything. We were trying to protect the immigrants from scrupulous landlords that were violating all kinds of regulations, from health to building to fire, and it's just that the quality of life was really taken down. And then you look at it too, it wasn't only a public health concern, it was also social and moral as well. And you take the morality where, you have individuals living in these rooms that they're not related. You have a mom, let's say, with her daughter and son in one room, 2 contractors or roofers, let's say, living in another room, in another family living in another room, not related at all, but yet, there's that degree of safety that you'd have to look out for as well. And that's where the moral part comes in. A young girl goes to the bathroom during the middle of the night and there's some individuals that are still up. That's a problem, especially when you're not related, you don't even know each other. The social part is it too, when you have young individuals, a young boy or a young girl living with you, they want to more or less assimilate into our culture and maybe bring their friends home to do homework and to better their education and to enjoy the quality of life that America would give. But yet you can't, because that's not the habitable environment that they have at the time. And like you said, they were property owners getting $300, $400, $500 a cubicle, from a cellar before you even went to the habitable rooms. So that's what we were trying to prevent. And, it wasn't only because of that, it was the health and safety issues as well. Now you take a first responder, a police or a fireman, going to that house because of a medical emergency or a fire. In their mind, that's a 2-family house. Yet they don't know that there's rooms downstairs, there's rooms in the attic, in whatnot, or doors that are locked that they can't open to get in. And that causes problems not only for the residents living there, but also for the first responders who would visit that home. So like I said, when we did that project with the occupancy, it was to protect everybody.
Well, but Milford has a history of that. Most people that you tell police tickets have no revenue recognition for the police. find it amazing that
Yep.
if a Milford cop hands out a ticket, the money goes into the general fund.
mhm.
Because we don't want them to be handing out, you have small towns sometimes which says, you gotta write 100 tickets a week
Yeah.
to make the budget.
Yep. I mean, same thing for us. We're not looking to ticket. That's a last resort if we can't get compliance. We'd much rather get compliance and educate someone before we have to go to a monetary fine. That would only come as you have to gain compliance when we see an issue that someone won't correct. But we generally have a warning, a second warning, maybe even a third sometimes. Anything we can do to try to get someone in compliance for their safety and the well-being of the town before we'd go that route.
Board of Health gives tickets?
We do.
I never knew
Oh,
that.
yeah, we give tickets for, let's say, rubbish or selling tobacco products, to minors and whatnot. Yeah,
We do the reinspection
criminal
fees, but not really.
disposition.
Well, that I can understand.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, we do it more so now. It's we're doing it more with rubbish. We'll do tickets, and that's generally after 2 or 3 warnings for the same property.
But Dan, you talk about overcrowding in a home. I get a bucket or 2. If you put 3 more families in my house,
Yep.
it's going to be a lot more than a bucket or 2.
Oh yeah,
And we see that too.
yeah. That's an indication. One of the indications that there is overcrowding is when you see excessive amounts of trash coming from one house. So that is,
Now, when you start looking, what are the biggest challenges that you face in home inspection?
and seeing in Milford is definitely the overcrowding. That's by far the biggest issue that I've seen since I've been here. It's hard. I mean, Lisa and John do most of our housing inspections, so it's hard for me to tell you exactly what they're seeing most of the time. They try to run some of the stuff by me, but they really are the ones on the ground front of it.
But I think you're right on. The most difficult thing, issue to correct would be the overcrowding, because you're talking about displacing families or displacing an
But
individual.
overcrowding of non-related people.
Oh, right,
Exactly. Yeah.
Because,
right.
your family, my family all came over, and you take the whole family into
Right.
one house,
Right, you can't.
and there was a ton of people living there, and then as they got established,
They spread out.
the oldest brother, the oldest daughter,
Right.
went and got a new house, and little by little they assimilated. But that's not anything.
No,
No, that's not what
we're
we're
talking
targeting at
about
all.
illegal rooming houses, overcrowding, with non-related individuals, where they have individuals locks on their doors and whatnot, and they're renting out rooms instead of being a family. We also,
Maybe I don't understand. We have zoning laws.
Yes.
So where you live, where I live, it's zoned for residential.
right.
Yep.
Legally, I can rent out part of my house.
You really
really
shouldn't. You really shouldn't.
Like I say, I'm running a business.
Right.
The problem is that they're not doing it legally.
Right.
They're doing it under the cover of darkness. Essentially, they're just talking to their friends, getting someone else into an extra room to make a few extra bucks, and they'll lock each door. A lot of them, I think since I've been here in 3 months, I can think of 3 or 4 examples that I've heard of from John and Lisa just in that last couple months, where they've gone to do an inspection in an apartment, either with zoning or the fire department, and they've come across this where they have individual rooms being rented, and there'll be evidence, there'll be locks on every door, there'll be fridges in each room, where
Oh.
Yep.
So like a padlock
exactly
on inside
On the outside.
on the
on the
outside,
outside
Yep.
of that room, inside the house, outside the room.
Yeah.
Right.
or a key lock so someone can't get in there other than that
Yeah, other
person.
than them. Right, it's their individual room, and like Dan said, you go in, you'll see a microwave or a little,
A hot pot, or
Well, I would think
and a
anything-
refrigerator.
The refrigerators are bad, but the hot plates,
Hot
and all,
plate,
exactly.
those things
Yeah,
suck
no.
down 15 amps apiece.
There's,
yeah,
there's
that's-
nothing right about the situation at all. And that's something that it's a continuous work in progress.
it should be something we'll be able to address, hopefully, with the task force.
We
With
have- Right, we
Task force?
we revitalized the task force that we had in the past, at the time when the pandemic was hitting its heights, it had to more or less subside a bit. But now that that's over, between the select board and the Board of Health, we got that going again, and that includes a police officer, a community police officer, representative of the Board of Health, representative of the Building and Zoning Department, a fireman to go in I guess the zoning as well. And that way, then when we go together, we're going as a team. We don't have to go individual and say, yeah, that could be a building department violation, or that could be a zoning violation, or a fire code. Everyone's there at the same time. So we more or less could cite, educate, and correct, hopefully.
Well, when we did the housing program, weren't you paying so much a year as a landlord?
Right.
And accepting that you would be inspected?
Right. Right.
So I think zoning, they said it's 5 families and above, they have the right to inspect. So that's what we're gonna start with the task force. They're
Yeah.
gonna try to set up a couple streets where we have a few of those 5 families, and we'll walk a street and we'll go into those different houses, go through all those houses and, make sure everything's up to code for across all spectrums of the,
Especially where you're hearing the complaints, Albert. For instance, like you may get a neighbor calling up and say there's an appearance of overcrowding at the house next door to me or across the street. We get 2 or 3 of them. That's the neighborhood we're going to go to. And that way there, and it shows too, because once the word gets around that we're here again, and we're here to inspect and to correct conditions that could have an impact on quality of life, people are going to listen. Because first thing we're going to do, like Danny was saying, we're going to educate first. Tell you why that shouldn't be done, and the repercussions that could happen if it's there, how it can hurt people, how it could hurt their liability. But anyway, and if that doesn't work, our next resort is court. We'll find through the non-criminal disposition, where it gives code enforcement the ability to write ticket fines, and after that, we heard some people too paying fines, so they can go on and keep violating. So that's when, for instance, I can give you a prime example. There's a particular property, I can say it's near the police station, I won't say the particular street, but they had their whole backyard asphalted, and it's volleyballs, and it's for 3 or 4.
Oh, the nightlight.
3 or 4 courts, selling at the time alcohol and cigarettes and food and whatnot. And again, in a residential area, there's a commercial business going on all hours of the night. It's the continuation of it. So during COVID, when we weren't supposed to gather, they gathered, and the Board of Health fined them twice, $1,500 for that.
Well, that's significant.
Which was the amount that the state gave us permission to fine. They're putting people's lives in danger. And then what happened is he continued to do it, and what he did is he charged the people to play, so therefore he could pay the fine. So one of the options that we had is we talked to the judge, and if he's brought in, what he said he would do was put him away for a week, to let him know that it's not going to be just a fine. You're going to go away to let's say Worcester House of Correction, West Boylston, for
Go visit Uncle Lou.
a week or 2. And that's the cooperation we've been getting from the courts, which is
Yeah, I can see
appreciative.
it because the overcrowding, the safety is the primary issue, but the inconvenience.
oh, yeah,
If I got 8 cars to park around one house,
yeah, you're blocking the neighbors in.
Sure.
You're disrupting their sleep. Their nice, calm, quiet evenings when they're trying to relax and unwind after a long day, and you got a ball bouncing all night,
And like
and
you
loud
were-
music and everything
like you were
else going
mentioning
on.
too, the amount of rubbish too that accumulates
Oh, yeah.
there.
Yep.
And hence, whatever else happens. But it's something that we keep an eye on, and
speaking of rubbish, rats.
Yeah.
I'm hearing that, and I don't know how accurate it is, but since they knocked down Draper's, the rats moved.
could have been. Again, it's multi-factors with rodents, for instance, rats, if you want to stratify just them. But anyway, yeah, what happens with rats, if there's a rodent problem in a neighborhood, there's a sanitation problem. First thing you ask as an inspector or a pest control person or anybody that knows about it is they're going to say, what are they eating? You know, you need food, water, and shelter to survive. Water they could get from the raindrops on the or the dew in the morning on grass. They don't need that much water. Shelter. A rat can go into a stone wall or dig a burrow, which they're very capable of doing. That's their habitat or their shelter. But food, it's not in abundance as anything else is. So they'll only stay around for where the food is. So again, like they say, if there's a rodent problem in a neighborhood, then there's a sanitation problem somewhere. So when they say, well, what is the Board of Health and the town doing about that? Well, what we're doing is finding what's conducive to the rodents, such as Joe Blow must have his rubbish out, all over the place and causing them to go. Or there's something as simple as a bird feeder, and the seeds are landing on the ground. Rats will tend to that. Or someone's having a cookout, and the grease from the food would fall on the ground. All that is food for these rats, and that's what's going to cause them to stay around. Again, if the sanitation problem was addressed, you wouldn't have the rats. Eventually, they would move out. But again, why they're here around? Number one, we're having such a good winter, a very mild winters that we've been having. They breed more, they eat more, and they're more in abundance. The same thing, like you say, now we're seeing, because of the developments that we've been having, you're seeing more deer in areas that you've never seen them before. You're seeing wild turkeys that you haven't seen in areas before. Coyotes and fox. It's the same thing. And rats. They're all coming to our residential areas.
My darling bride has got my hockey stick and looking for those deer.
Yeah.
Because they love her junipers.
Sure, they love that. They love that. But anyway, that's what we're up against, and it's not just Milford. It's all over the place. It's all over Massachusetts, New England, wherever.
It's been a big problem the last few years with the mild winters, especially.
Mild winters, especially, and their lack of predators.
Yep.
That's another thing too.
In this area, with the rivers running through, it's very conducive to.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we've
Right.
always had mice.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to call every year pest service.
Mm-hmm.
My shed the mice are in there
Mm-hmm.
to get rid of
That's
them.
just-
Yeah.
But I never heard rats.
Mm-hmm. Well, they're coming out because, like I said, a lot of their areas too are being developed, and they're coming into our residential areas. They like what humans like. They like our houses. They like our food. It's something that you got to be aware of. And they say, well, so are you trapping them? Are you baiting them? Well, you kill one, 8 more are being born. So it's really shoveling sand against the tide. It's something that, again, it's people's habits that would cause them to stay.
But now, it would seem pretty obvious. Trash goes out either the night before it's picked up or the morning in a bin.
Well, we don't require it to be out in a bin right now. That is something we are
That's
looking
something
at.
we're trying to do.
And it would be to help prevent these rat issues.
But don't most people have containers or no?
Some of them do.
Depends on the area of town, to be honest with you. We do see a lot of streets where it's just put out in bags. It's all supposed to be stored until the time the state code allows for it to be stored in rodent-proof containers until the time it's put out. But unless the town actually puts that regulation in place, it has to be stored at the curbside, and it's not required
Well, I
as of this
learned my
time.
lesson when I put out a bag and the crows came.
Exactly.
Of all the animals or birds,
Yeah, they throw that all over the street.
exactly.
Yeah, and that's one of the things, Al, that we were trying to do. Hopefully, is more or less we're in the 3rd decade of the 21st century, get into the times, because most of our surrounding towns already have these bins.
We're actually
with the lids.
we're actually the only one that doesn't.
Right. So what we were trying to do was get that going with Harvey, who was going to give us a decent
They're going to basically do it at cost.
at cost, exactly. And
What was that cost? If you look
Okay, let's get into this, because this is a hot topic in
yes.
Milford. Poor Dan walked into
yes,
the saws.
I did.
It's always been comfortable that if you have a party, graduation party, I mean, think about telling Miss Cookie that she had to have a smaller party because she can't put her trash out there. I would not
No.
count on, no. You know, my darling bride, your darling bride, no.
no, that wouldn't happen.
You know, this is their kids, but, you know, the issue always came up is you put the recycle out, and I guess we were always unlimited recycle,
Yes, we're unlimited. Yes.
and you had one big bucket.
So right now it's 140 gallons total. So it would come to generally 95, and like a 45 is generally the total
So
size.
2 buckets.
Depending on the size, but 140 gallons total, or 260 gallon, something along those lines. Yep.
This new efficient way of doing it would be 1 mega bucket for recycle.
And one for trash as well.
For trash.
Okay, now I got to ask a question. I feel conflicted sometimes because I'm being a good doobie, and I got my little blue my tall, skinny ones for my recycle, and I break up my newspaper, and I break up my metal and glass. And then I read that, wait a minute, it costs the town more money for me. If I put an item in the recycle, it costs me a third more.
It does.
Okay, help me understand the logic there.
I wish it was an easy one to explain. It's, I mean, it really comes down to what's being mandated by us from the state.
Yeah. Right now, Dan, I believe it's $110 a ton.
101 a ton for recycling.
For recycling.
74,
and
75.
74 for rubbish. So there's that much of a difference.
Wait a minute, $100 for
Recycling
recycle
per ton.
Yep.
and 70 odd, so it's 25-30% more.
Yep.
I was being facetious, but
It's
I
about a
wasn't.
third.
No, you
It's
were right
about a
on.
third, essentially.
Yeah, and one of the reasons is for that is because the market is overflowing. In other words, there's no market for, let's say, plastic bottles anymore. Glass at one time was a big recyclable material, especially when we had Foster Forbes right over here, right across from over here. They would pay us close to $1,000 for our a month for our glass. And right now, glass is considered a contaminant. One of the reasons why China, that's what happened before, 2017, when China started.
Well, China, when they cut and said 5% contamination maximum,
Right.
sort of
we-
ruled out everything we have.
We couldn't comply with that, right. For the simple reason, glass is, when you mix everything single stream, it goes in, it gets broken up and whatnot. There could be liquids or whatever inside the glass would contaminate the paper and other recyclable materials. And that would cause that problem, which is why the industry, when I say the industry, the recycling industry wants to make glass a waste instead of a recyclable product.
Yeah, they are pushing very hard.
And they're
for
pushing very hard for that, because of the contamination issues. Another thing too, there's an overabundance of plastics. There's not enough market for it, and we have too much supply and not enough demand. And you can see not acres and acres of bales of plastics, but miles of bales of plastics. Newspaper is very expensive to recycle. First of all, you got to de-ink. You got to get all the ink off that paper to more or less
Even
make
the
it.
newspaper used to be gold.
Yeah, it used to be gold, and cardboard was too at one time.
They
Yeah.
talked about Milford's newspaper being sought after. It was primo.
We used to get X amount of dollars a ton for that too, off our bill when we were recycling paper a lot. And that all stopped because of not only that, but when you take the ink off, now you're creating a hazardous material, for the byproduct, and that costs now and whatnot. So it's cheaper to buy new as opposed to recyclable, and that's causing a problem. Then you get the labor intense costs and whatnot. So all that adds up, and It just makes it,
But now, are they really recycling? I mean, if I'm an environmentalist
Mhm.
and I care about this planet, I'll recycle just for the good of
right.
the planet.
40% of what you're recycling is goes to a landfill.
Okay, because I'm reading how more than half or whatever
Mhm.
either gets incinerated or
Yeah.
put into a
Oh,
landfill.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yep.
Right.
Now, landfills. I mean, when we grew up, we had the dump.
We had the dump. Yep.
You know, I mean,
Mhm.
people get mad when you call Plains Park the dump.
But it
But-
was.
But it was. You had a place to go. Where are the landfills now?
I think you have only a handful now, probably around the state.
Yes, not many. They're all close. I mean,
But they're closing them. Once they reach capacity, the state wants them to go find another way. Don't look for another landfill.
yeah, Taunton closed theirs 2020, I think,
Mhm.
or 2021 was the end of it. So yeah, I mean, we went through the whole closing and
Yep.
all the board hearings for the
We had to
closing
do that
of it.
with
yeah.
ours too, and
So, I mean, even capping a landfill's got to be a forever process.
Sure.
Yes,
It
it
is,
is. Yep.
I mean, you think of our Plains Park.
Plains Park, we have an 18-inch rubber membrane first covering it all, and then we have it all filled up with clean fill and of course the loom. But those candy canes that you see coming out of it, those are the vents to more or less vent out the methane
Well, you don't
gas.
want methane building up as a
No,
pocket.
exactly.
No, you light a match, the whole field will blow up. But that's 23 acres there that we have good use out of.
But eventually, that's going to continue. I mean, it's got to keep degrading and
Right.
settling.
And as you could see, as a finance committee chairman, sometimes the park comes in and asks for extra money to more or less repair that sinking. But what happened was when we capped ours, it was closed a good 15 years first
Yeah.
before we actually capped it. So a lot of the settlement already happened. This is just
Oh, okay.
other settlement that's a minor settlement compared to what was.
What could have been.
happening.
Yeah.
So now, this new program that's being considered,
Yes.
it would be one big container for recycle,
Mhm.
Yep. And one for trash.
one for trash. And it has to be their containers.
Yes, that's what would make it so the automation would work. That's why. So essentially, what they were going to provide was and over the course of the 5 years, it would come out to about $140 per household for 2 containers. The best cost right now, wholesale for the state, is $60 per container. So you're $120 before they're labeled and tagged. So you're looking at, and then they would distribute them, they'd maintain them, they'd replace them if they were broken. So in all, they're probably losing money on providing those containers.
Mhm.
But they would do that to automate the system, make their lives easier, and then we would own them at the end of those 5 years.
And the idea is to have one guy there automatically
Yep. So they can,
flipping.
Yep.
Mhm.
and it would help with the storage of trash. Would also help with the rodent issues in the long term.
Yeah, because everything would now be contained instead of blowing
Yep.
all over the street.
Exactly.
One of the good things about that too, Albert, was what Dan said was the ownership. See, what you really try to avoid is having the rubbish company lend them to you or they own them. And then again, if they lose a contract, they got to take them with them. You know what I mean? And then we start off from
Start
square
again.
one
And that's why they need a 5-year contract
Right.
to make it so.
To make it so
Otherwise,
that
the
they
cost
could
would be
afford
so great.
to give them to us.
Well, that or the cost would be so great for us to afford them that
Right.
it would be not feasible.
Exactly.
Now-
If it was a 2-year or a 3-year contract.
Exactly. You'd be looking at
What happens if I have 95 gallons of junk?
You have it over the limit because you had a party, let's say.
Yeah.
Well, what most of the surrounding towns do too. If you ever go to Stop and Shop at Shaw's and whatnot, you
The
see
designer trash
you
bags.
see the trash bag. What do they call it? Like $2 or $3 or something?
there'd be ways. We could even look at giving a handful of them free to every resident every year that for situations like that.
Yeah.
It's not where we're looking to charge people a lot of money. We're just
No.
trying to make it essentially talking to the state. We throw out more trash than anybody in central Massachusetts in the whole region by a long way.
Yeah.
Milford?
Yeah.
Oh, by not
Yeah.
even close.
Mhm.
We're double what Worcester throws out
Right.
per household. Double.
For a household.
Is that because Worcester uses those little designer trash bags?
Oh, that's part of the reason. But
Could
I
be.
mean, it's
Because people are more aware now. They don't want to overfill
yeah. So they're
their bag because they got to buy a new one. You know what I mean? So them
Yeah, I
are,
used to
them are up
remember
to
when my daughter
recycle.
come home from school with trash bags.
Yeah.
Because she didn't want to pay for the designer trash bags at
Yeah.
$3 a bag.
Right.
But I mean, there's certainly ways. There's ways to reduce it. Whether it's more recycling, composting is one thing the state's really trying to push now. We could certainly look down those avenues. Whether it's how well it would work for here, it's something we'd have to explore. But there are options.
How much does it save us if we go to this one stream thing?
I don't know how much of a savings it's going to be, but it's going to save a lot of trash. It should save in the long term
The
because
tonnage.
the tonnage
The
will
tonnage,
save us.
yeah.
I mean, the reality is the 95 gallon is actually would give us as much trash as what we're currently throwing away. So it's really not a reduction in service. It's just a more efficient way to do the service. What it averages out to be now is 95 gallons a week, is what the tonnage actually goes out to be per household.
Would we still have we'd still have recycle
Yep,
and
two separate. Yep. You'd have two bins. One for recycle and one for trash.
but yet if I put it in the trash, I save money
Yeah.
compared
Right.
to the
I know
recycle.
what you're saying, yeah. But you can't because now you're contaminating the trash. If that's
I
such a
just-
thing. If that's such a thing.
I'm torn here to say love of the environment,
Yeah.
love of the town.
Yeah.
I mean, the long term hope is I know they're trying to develop better markets for the recyclables, and the hope is that eventually they'll find better uses and they'll be more profitable,
Yeah.
and there'll be more incentives to redo that recycling. We're sitting on a meeting for grants next week to try to find more ways to generate some more money for these kind of programs too. So we'll hopefully be able to apply for
Yeah, I
that.
think the shock factor is what hit when you first came with this.
I'm sure it's
That we had said to me, and I'll admit it, I said this is a tax.
Yep.
Because if you're going to charge me for designer trash bags, that's putting your hand in my pocket and taking
Yeah,
out
I
money.
know, yeah.
That's a tax. That should come before the town, like we always do with the referendums, and say, okay, guys,
Yep.
this is going to save us X dollars, or it's going to save this, or it's going to do that. How do you feel?
Right. Right.
Because I can see myself when we have like a party or something saying, "Yo,
yeah.
I got 2 buckets."
Yeah.
Well, as I said, there'd be ways to either, we give everybody a certain amount of trash bags every year to start, or you'd be able to pick those up at the transfer station or with something like that. For that extra, there are going to be, people have a big Christmas party or graduation parties. I
Graduations,
know
yeah.
that they're big here.
Milford is big on graduation
Yes,
parties.
I've heard that many times already. But I mean, there would certainly be ways to do it. I mean, a lot of towns, even those trash bags, they've kept the cost very low. It's just to try to keep people to think about it. It's not to make the cost high. It's to make people think about what they're throwing away. It's really the main goal of it.
The issue I saw was these cute little yellow bags. I mean, you could hold 2 cans.
Oh yeah, no, we would be looking at. There's certainly options. There's 30-gallon trash bags like contractor type ones that we could easily do, even if they were $1 a piece and something like that. We're not, like I said, it's not. It's to make people kind of think about more so than it is to have
I would
charge a lot of
certainly
money.
feel a lot better if it was not a revenue-making
Yeah, it's not meant to be.
activity.
It's meant to break
I mean,
even, really.
Yeah, it's we're going to lose money on trash is the reality of this.
Yeah.
We do every year.
Every year.
And
Yeah.
this is just to try to dial it in. So I mean, our contracts, comparing it to other towns, municipalities across this region, are very reasonable, and it could easily get, exceptionally more expensive. Another $1 million wouldn't be even a drop in the bucket compared to some other municipalities of this size.
Well,
Yeah.
now, I got my buckets. I got my designer trash bags. What happens if I got a large item? Today, once a week,
Yep.
I can roll it down the end of my driveway, and the gnomes make magic, and it all disappears.
Right. And that's something that we're considering too.
Yeah, the one thing that we considered is even doing it, once a month. We have a lot of people that are abusing that system because none of the other towns around here take them. So Milford's taking everybody's. Anybody that knows someone in Milford's bringing their large bulk items to
And
Milford.
that's true. That's not even an exaggeration. We hear that from not only the residents. Oh, my brother in Hopedale or Mendon, he had a couch. I told him to bring it to my house. The rubbish people see that. There was a couple of people who were into
The cleanup businesses.
rubbish themselves. They were picking up bulk items and whatnot. And you'd go to that street You'd see a couch, a love seat.
You mean
A
like gut
desk.
junk people?
Yep.
Yeah.
They were taking advantage of the
They're
system.
taking advantage of the system. They'd live in Milford. They'd be picking up junk and they'd be bringing it to there because once a week, one a week. And when we call them and say, how can you have a couch every week? Well, I'm entitled to one bulk item a week, and there it is. But he'd be charging you to take it away, and he'd be putting it out for us to take on our tax dollar.
See, I more worry about. Remember we were kids, Asylum Street.
Mm-hmm.
You want to go see televisions?
Mm-hmm.
Just drive up
Just
and
right
down.
to Silent Street, right? Yeah.
Refrigerators.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
it was always, well, it was in the back of my pick-me-up truck. I must have hit a
Yeah,
bump.
and it fell off.
Oh, we certainly want to provide a way to get rid of those items. We just need to make it more economical for the town in the long
Exactly.
term. Having it once a week, it's lending itself to being taken advantage of.
Or call up the contractor.
Yep.
And make a deal with them, because they said that one of the options they had is they'll do it. Harvey will do it. You call them and not the town, and they'll pick it up for a
Very reduced.
very reasonable fee.
We could even work something in where it's, the town, instead of covering it all, we're covering a part of it.
Yeah,
Essentially,
absolutely.
instead of it costing, the $30 for an item, that maybe it's 15 and the
Right.
town's.
Dan, candidly, I don't think it's the money.
Yep.
I mean, I go down to the transfer station that you guys ran.
Mhm.
I had no clue what it was. I'd have my SUV full of stuff.
Mhm.
The guy'd say, that's $20.
Yeah.
I have no idea if it was $2 for this and $5 for that. It was convenient.
Mhm. Mhm.
If he had said 30,
Yeah.
I would have said yes, sir.
We just want to we want to keep it convenient. Because we don't want it getting dumped somewhere. That would be the whole point of this, is try to find a way that people know what's going on. They could easily get it scheduled. Whether it's we set it up for once a month, we set it up for where they got a call. It would be something easy and convenient. Try to keep the cost low because we don't want to put a
Sure.
big burden
No, of
on
course
people.
not. Right.
Because then that will lead to the same thing: people dumping it somewhere if we have an exorbitant cost.
Right.
We just want to make sure it's not going to is adversely affecting the rest of the taxpayers.
Now, do you still have the seniors that drive behind the trash trucks, make sure people recycle?
No.
And
No, that's when they had the program where they
Yeah.
did a reduction in taxes or whatever. No, we had it out a couple of times after we had a few seniors doing that. The years after that, no one wanted to do it anymore. So I guess it was very monotonous, for the ride around in the back of the truck and whatnot. But no, that's what we do too. We have the recycling truck. Keep tabs on those who haven't recycled in quite some time, because they would see it over and over and over again. And of course, you see it in a week or two, they don't do it. Maybe they're on vacation.
well, yeah, you go
You
to
know.
the Cape, you go
Yeah.
somewhere for a couple
Right.
of weeks.
Right. But now you go by, they haven't done it all month, they haven't done it all summer. Now you know there's someone that's not participating in the program.
So, how do you go about getting a program like this understood and accepted?
Well, it's going to start
Education and awareness.
on.
Yeah. Get that out there. Get the awareness. Make them aware that a program's out there. It's going to be changing, and educate them why.
I mean,
Get that out there.
I can speak from personal experience because we went through this in Wareham, where I live. I think 5 years ago now. And once that word got out, it got out fast. People talked to your neighbor. You didn't go anywhere without hearing something about it. So once it gets out on social media, we have people call regularly. Several times a week, asking about if we're getting toters here, because that rumbling that might happen has been out there. So we do get those calls pretty much weekly, 2 or 3 times a week. So people are looking for it.
And you remember when we started the recycling program back in the 90s, we had that education program out there. We had at the time we had media out
You
there
did
to help us.
flyers, you did
And
forums.
we
Yep.
did the sign across the banner across Main Street.
Yeah, we looked into advertising in the Milford paper, and
Yeah.
we did all that.
Right.
We'd obviously social media is huge now, and that would be.
We have a Milford paper.
Well, back then we did.
Well, there's
Yeah,
like
we
a
had the
town
Middlesex
flyer.
News, too.
Yeah.
We could, we looked into basically getting flyers printed that we'd put in, local supermarkets and stuff like that to make sure where,
No, but I think legitimately, if you offer a couple, 2, 3 forums, have the studio put it up on TV and YouTube,
Yeah.
so people can refer to it.
Mhm.
Then all of a sudden, it starts feeling like we had some participation in it.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
The reaction
Yeah.
you ran into is I felt somebody's hand going in my pocket.
Yeah.
And nobody told me why they were going in my pocket. This felt like a tax increase with extra bags
Yeah.
and stuff.
Yeah.
And, it's just on general principles, I may be wrong, but I'm going to fight tax increases if I don't
Oh, I
understand them.
certainly understand that. Yep.
Sure.
We're not, yeah, it's not what we're hoping to do. We're hoping to try to keep the town clean and provide a better service for everybody.
Which lets us to go, any other new program we have, not only invite our finance committee rep, but a good portion of the finance committee members in to our meeting to go over it and
Certainly.
more or less quell all the questions that they may have before the presentation.
Yeah, otherwise you get the reaction you got. When
It happens. That's okay.
I just felt so bad. Well, Dan, welcome to Milford. Rah!
There was some excitement in my life. It was good.
Yeah, there you go.
Now, during the year, we've always had hazmat days and vaccine. Anything new and exciting coming up?
The first Saturday in November, we have the hazardous waste day. Last year we did close to 10,000 pounds. One year we did
It was a lot last year. I saw that with this
I
going
think it
through
was
everything.
12,000 pounds.
It's done by containers now. They don't actually break
but
it
they
down
actually
to
do weight
poundage.
and whatnot.
Yeah.
See, I like it in pounds. That
Yeah.
way there when you put the press
Yeah,
release
but
out.
still, that's
There was a lot.
There was
'Cause
a lot.
I went through.
6 tons of junk.
Yeah, we went through for the town report this
all
couple
that
weeks
could
ago.
have been out in the environment, but we gave. And again, that's off. That's no extra charge. Milford is probably one of the only municipalities in the whole area that makes it part of a service without any fee. Usually, I know Hopedale and a few other towns around us. I think it's $45 to $50
I
a
wouldn't
car if you bring something.
See, I love the idea of having a hazmat day.
Mm-hmm.
Because some people are going to take that paint can and tip it.
Oh, sure.
Oh yeah,
Mm-hmm.
gas, oil, all the above.
Let it dry out so they can put it in the trash. But
Mhm.
the liquid now has gone down to our aquifer.
Exactly.
Yep.
Whereas I got to believe that most people, if it's not going to be too inconvenient and won't cost them much.
Well, that's the whole thing, is keeping the cost. If we can keep it away from people, we're encouraging them to come actually do it the right way.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we want, is just to encourage people to do things the right way.
That, and we even have a shred day. You have documents that you feel as though you don't want any, instead of throwing them in your rubbish, where there's that possibility of when that load is dumped in the hallway of the incinerator, it's not all over the place. We have a shred day too. I think that's in September.
I wouldn't know. To be
Yeah,
honest, I haven't been
you
here
have
long
that.
enough to
The
know
fellow comes in
that.
4 or 5 hours on a Saturday, and anybody who wants to bring their documents is shredded, and that paper's recyclable.
Over the millennia, over the decades, we've gone through bumps and different diseases.
Mhm.
Remember, we went through the TB,
TB when we were kids.
and that was no fault of people. They were coming from areas where these diseases
Mm-hmm.
had not been eradicated.
Right.
We running into anything like that now?
We were at one time. It was tuberculosis.
We do see. I mean, we had the nurse come in today.
We still see cases now.
Because we raised the visiting nurses budget to make sure that we took care of.
You're right.
Yep. So yeah, she was in today. She was dealing with a tough TB case. But yes,
Yeah, I mean, and
they do
I
happen.
remember back in 2005 was why we started the occupancy bylaw, is because we had 0 tuberculosis cases. I think the last one was late 1940s. All of a sudden, in 2005, we have 9 cases, which anything above and beyond the regular cases is an epidemic. So right away, we said, first of all, how's TB spread? Through respiratory, in close quarters.
Put
You know,
bunches of people
Right.
crammed together in space that isn't ventilated well, and an airborne disease is not going to stay
Exactly.
alone.
That's why prisons have
That's
a very high rate of that. But anyway, these, so with that alone, that's when we started the occupancy bylaw to get more or less control of the overcrowding, which was one of the causes of tuberculosis, and that worked. But that seems to be a problem. It seems to be very well under control, except some scattered cases, like the one the V&A come in. What was it, like a one, like a fully blown?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. They were.
Yeah.
She was trying to help him with the insurance because I know the payments had gone.
Mhm.
The cost, the
Well,
medical costs had gone through the roof
Yeah, but
already.
people have to remember, when we did the vote to support your proposal to increase VNA, there were some people that came and said, see, you're spending more money just taking care of these illegal immigrants.
Yeah, but it's
But
the,
It's to help the whole
I
community.
laughed, I said, excuse me, those kids are in our schools,
Mhm.
Yep.
next to our kids.
right, right.
So let's forget about the fact that it's the humane thing, the
Right.
right, it's the Milford thing to do,
And it's
to
public
take
health.
care of kids.
Mhm.
Because
Right.
you know, I've always been, the minute they walk into Milford, they bleed Milford red, they're ours.
Mhm.
But how many of your grandchildren do you want to get TB?
Mhm.
None.
Right.
Exactly. So
Right,
we're
right.
spending the money, we can say because it's the right thing, the humane thing, but it's a defensive thing too.
Keeps
Mhm.
everybody safe.
Right, that's for sure. And like I said, at one time, the only clinic they had was a part-time, a few days a week in Worcester and one in Framingham. And of course, a lot of them were during the day. A lot of these international residents that came to Milford worked during the
They
day.
can't take an afternoon off.
Right,
No.
right, and they couldn't. So what we did is the Board of Health worked with Milford Hospital, and we had a clinic now in Milford. So that really helped out too, you know. And again, the Finance Committee was generous enough to give us that extra money to help with our VNA, because one of the things, as you would know, as a science person, is that with tuberculosis, you need that direct observation therapy, that you're taking your medication. That's the only way it's going to work. And we needed the VNA to actually see them
We had to
Yeah.
pay the nurses
for nighttime too, because
to
they
be
work during
there
the day
and make sure that the dose was administered
Mhm.
and accepted.
and
Yeah.
accepted, right? You know, so that helped. You know, all that helped.
But right now, no issues.
No, no.
I mean, you can have one case. That's
Yeah, there's always going to be a smattering of
Right.
cases, especially with the population that's constantly
What
changing.
what the Board of Health is doing now, which I tried to do years ago, but I couldn't because with the new residents coming in, there's that vaccination mandate that you have to abide by before you went to schools. You know, your mumps, polio.
yeah. How
and-
does that work if you're not a U.S. born?
Okay.
Child.
And it's difficult because when I first tried to start it, there were those barrel hoops in our way as we were trying to run with it. And it was because when someone does come to, let's say, Milford, did they cross through Arizona? Did they cross through Texas? Did they cross through Florida or wherever? And while they were there, did they get their vaccinations there when they went to school there for that little amount of time that they were? And there was no way to trace that. And what our doctors, school doctor and Board of Health doctors were saying, you don't want to give that person two measles
You don't
shots.
want to double the.
You don't want to double that, you know, and we don't know what's going to happen. So we had to hold off on that. Now I believe we have that program
Yeah, so
along with the school. The Board of Health and school now partners together, and now we have a way to actually administer the
But
mandated.
how
we're
do you
doing
know?
it once a month. We're doing
Right, once a month we do
No, but I
vaccinations.
guess, you know, I think of some of the health questions that were asked of me. Did your father? Well, in Portugal, there were no records. You know, I couldn't tell you if he got vaccinated for this or for that. Or
Mm.
how do you know a child comes in, going to go to Milford schools? How do you know if they've been vaccinated?
The only thing is, I believe there's better record keeping now from when they did hit our border and whatnot, and they can find out if they did stay, let's say, at a school in Texas. There's a good way of our nurses to
So
know.
they would get vaccinated at our borders.
Sometimes they do,
Okay.
you know, but if they're here illegally, maybe they don't.
It's certainly a challenge.
It's a challenge.
There's no definite
Right.
way. I mean, once we do it here, it's recorded and provided to the state. And
Right, and that's your lifetime record.
that's but I mean, it's hard for us if they don't register it somewhere else. So it's really not a lot you can do. You just got to do the best you can with what data you're provided with.
Right. Well, we try.
Is it a problem right now?
I haven't seen it as a problem so far in my short time here.
No, No.
No, I mean, like I said, we're doing every month we're providing the vaccines to the
Mm-hmm.
schools, working with them to do these clinics.
Mm-hmm.
I guess, the last few months we've had, or in the last year, I think we've had really good participation.
Good participation. Yeah.
We're doing a few kids every month,
Mm-hmm.
which is great.
I mean, it's always the political piece of it that seems to get in the way. Then you ask the practical, do we really have an issue?
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
And if we don't have an issue,
Well, if you don't have an issue, that means everything is being worked
working.
out good.
That's what I'm
being
saying.
worked good.
Yep.
A lot of times we're
Trying to prevent the issue instead of
sometimes-
address it after it happens. We're trying
Right.
to make
So-
sure it doesn't happen.
Exactly, and that's, so far so good. But that's one of the things that we wanted to tackle. And again, parents, like you were just mentioned, we're concerned. I mean, a lot of these individuals are in school with our kids. And are they protected? So we try to make sure that they, at least the effort's made.
They have the opportunity
Mhm.
and the effort, and we're trying to provide what we
Right.
can.
at the end of the day, we have 4,400 kids.
Mm-hmm.
When we talk about our kids, it's 4,400 of them.
Mm-hmm.
And every single one has to be protected.
Exactly. Right, that's true.
Yeah.
Very true.
Well, as we're coming to an end, we haven't even talked about you getting out and visiting restaurants and
Yeah, I'm doing a little bit of it. I'm trying to help out as much as I can.
Yeah, so far so good with that too. Like you mentioned, and Joan is very good. She was a chef, so she has both.
she knows.
She knows.
She knows.
She knows.
I've
and-
dealt with a lot of food inspectors over
Right.
the years, and she is as knowledgeable as they come. That's why, like I said, I've been trying to tag along with her every chance I get to learn.
Right.
I mean,
she
she-
has some good software too, where when you do write a report, it more or less follows the state code, so you know what section of that code you're violating and why, and also pictures too of,
Yep.
of what the violations are.
Yeah, there's a lot of good software that's coming out now.
Yeah.
So that's Food Code Pro is what that is, and there's another
Mhm.
one, Housing Code Pro, that we're starting to
Mm-hmm.
use a little bit. They do have a pool software that they're working on now, and they're thinking about putting out. We had the woman that works with them and basically works with the municipalities with the two people that are developing that.
Mm-hmm.
She came
And
in.
that's just for swimming pools, huh?
Yep. Well, they have,
Good.
but they also have some other stuff that they're basically trying to, so they can get it versus having a tablet, which sometimes can be inconvenient when you're walking around.
Mhm.
That they can have on a phone too, which will be
Beautiful.
very convenient where you're not, especially a lot of times you need a flashlight in one hand and a tablet,
Mhm.
and you can't do anything.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
it's
So it'll be interesting in 6 months when we invite you back
Mhm. Yeah.
to find out what you've learned about Milford
Yep.
and what you're going to be taking on as new projects.
Mm.
Yep.
But from all of us, welcome to Milford.
Thank you.
Hopefully it'll be a nice, smooth transition in.
So far, so good.
And to you, you've been around forever,
Yeah.
so
You too.
it's just, I'll never forget when, I think it was Lenny said, he's the junior ranking member of the Board of Health.
Yeah, yeah.
He'd only been here 30-some years.
Yeah.
As always, thank you for joining. If you have a question, call the town hall. I mean, you can see the Board of Health, the health members all take their job seriously. They have a passion for this, they have experience, but if you see something, call them. And that'll help us all. And as always, to our 6 loyal viewers, may God bless, may tomorrow be a safer day than tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Not too long since I've been home. Been running all my life just